You look like you climbed the mountain and saw God.
What? Oh, I know. Seriously, how many people watch the video? Can we get rid of the video?
Absolutely
These lights,
not.
I look like a ghost.
What do you want me to do?
How come you look fine? I guarantee your lighting is perfect because you've worked on that for hours.
There's that better?
Is it?
You should see my head. Look in the look at my head. Look at my head. Here, I turn it off. Let's see what happens. There.
I like that.
Oh, that's nice.
That's much
see,
better.
Now look in my viewer.
Yeah.
And now look in your viewer. That's why we need the light. You see?
Sure. You look fine.
It looks like a fireside chat.
It does.
Back on she goes. Oh, there. That's better. Mm-hmm. Here, how about that? Is that better? Let's see.
You talked about the mountain top.
Yeah.
Or mountainside.
Yeah.
You're a fan of John Crist, right? You watch some of his stuff.
Him. Yeah.
I don't know where he was or what show he was doing, but I saw a little clip of him talking about that there were like 12 Christian hikers that climbed up Mount Everest. Did you?
No.
Have you heard this a little bit?
No.
So he tells this story about how someone was coming to him and saying, like, please pray for these Christian hikers. They climbed to the top of Mount Everest, and there's storms beneath them, so they can't get back down right now. So they're kind of like trapped at the top. And he goes, and sometimes I just decide, no, I'm not going to pray for them. He goes, I think, you know what? When God gets all his prayer requests, and it's like cancer and,
broken relationships.
Yeah, and poverty and all this. And he's like, what? I don't even want you guys up there.
Yeah.
What are you doing up there?
What are you doing up there?
I didn't tell you to go up there. Like, his delivery is so much better. But I just saw that like last night, and I was like laughing for like 10 minutes. Like, yeah, like God's like, no, I'm not helping you.
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
Have you ever, in let's just go back to your younger years, have you ever found yourself praying for something that you've completely gotten yourself into, and
my goodness,
completely like on you, and you shouldn't have done it, and you knew you shouldn't have done it. And you're like, give me a way out.
Yeah,
give me a
your prayer
lifeline
is,
here.
God, like, I know this is my fault and I did this, but please save me.
Right.
Please don't let there be consequences for this.
So maybe then the prayer should be for the people stuck in Everest would be, Lord, please help them to pray to you humbly to get them out of the situation.
Would you ever climb a mountain?
No. Yeah, well, like a mountain? What do you mean? Like that?
Would you do like an Everest?
No
Why?
way, man. No.
You want to be on top of the world?
I'm not interested in any of that at all. I like hiking. I like mountain hiking.
Yeah.
But I have no interest in putting my life in like very
people
obvious
die
peril
up there.
all the time.
And the
all
bodies
time.
stay.
Well, yeah, because how are you going to get them down?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not interested in that movie, Free Solo.
Oh my
Alex
gosh,
Honnold.
I've seen that. Yes.
Yeah. So
That
like, I'm not
dude's
interested in that
nuts.
either. And I'm not interested in that in a way, like very obviously the way that he does it, but nor am I interested in climbing with ropes and everything else. Mm-hmm. I don't have that. I don't have that thrill seeking.
You're afraid of heights.
And I'm afraid of heights.
That helps.
Yeah. So yeah, at one point in time, Alex was climbing that face, and there were people camping, like they had set up a tent on the side of that wall and slept.
Yeah, you're just like hanging there by a rope and sleeping.
That is asinine.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's almost like driving on bald tires,
It is. In winter.
Yeah.
It's dangerous.
Winter is coming.
It is. I'm getting new tires.
Yes, you are.
For those of you that don't know, every time I drive out to Aaron's house, he comes out and he inspects my tires. Like Dad, he comes and walks around my car and he's like, hey, get your tires.
Yeah.
Your tires are getting
you
bald.
do the quarter check. You put the quarter in the thread and you see.
Yeah.
And there are no threads.
Thanks, Dad.
There are no
I'm
threads.
getting new tires. Relax.
Well, you need to because
Snow's coming
on
this
All
weekend.
Hallows Eve, it's going to be a high of 32, a low of 21, by the way.
Yeah.
Just that day. The days surrounding, like the Monday and the Wednesday, are...
But if you are a
Not that
kid
bad.
that's brave enough to go out in that, you're going to get a ton of candy because there are not going to be a lot of kids out in that.
You're going to score.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
going to be big.
I was talking to Leah this morning. She's like, I don't know what we're going to do. I'm like, why?
You do the best Leah impression.
Well, because I've I'm her father. I'm like, what do you mean? My friends and I are all going to be Disney princesses, and would they want to wear dresses? I'm like, well, with winter coats over the top of them, they don't want to do that. I'm like, okay, well, they will, because it's going to be 20-some degrees.
Yeah.
That's a bummer, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Iowa does the last Saturday of October.
That is so smart. I know.
Right? Why don't we do that?
Yeah. Because it also, it's a Tuesday night.
It's a Tuesday night. You think about like all of the activities that kids have and all that stuff. And then school the next day, of course. And
Yeah.
God bless those teachers.
Yeah, I bet the day after.
On a Wednesday morning
Yeah.
with
that's
kids that have been
not
up all
fun.
night and full of sugar. Nobody's in a good mood the next day.
No.
They got a Halloween hangover, so to speak. But
Yeah.
you referenced teachers or people that work with kids in your message this past Sunday.
I did.
Yeah, you said we had junior high youth. Phew, that's a group.
Yeah. It is. I know. I'm in there. I love them.
They are fun.
But you got to have a love for that age group to be in there.
There's something about it. So I and my son Logan is this way too. He's like, I always used to say I'm not a fan of other people's kids, and I find him saying that now. He's like, I like kids in our family, but I'm not a fan of other people's kids, and that's an ignorant statement, because there's something so awesome about working with other people's kids. Because in your own family, you all have sort of the same background and the history and personalities. I mean, you can navigate those. But when you meet other people, and particularly kids, that are like kind of maybe rambunctious or energetic or whatever, there's something energizing about that. I mean, do you not feel like energetic when you're around
they're fun.
energetic people, energetic kids?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. I mean, you get into that room with them, and there's 20 of them in there bouncing off the walls, and I mean, there's an energy. It's palpable, but yeah, and that's such a fun group because they're not little kids, but they're not like teenagers. Like they're not high schoolers yet. Where they're like worried about being too cool and stuff like that. Like you can still get them to do really goofy, fun things. And they're not afraid to do it. Like like Leah, dressing up like a Disney princess. Like they still have that little kid in them still, and so it's like big kids. You get to do games with them, and then the conversations are interesting too because they're just starting to get into like that next phase of looking at life differently and a little more maturely, and you get to kind of walk through that with them. I love middle school's a fun age.
It is a fun age, and you said like they're silly.
They're silly. They are,
and that's a good thing. It's a good thing to have some silliness in you.
Yeah,
yeah, for sure. Yes, sir.
But Sunday. So week 2 of Dream Big. Last week talked about time. That one of the things that God gives us the opportunity to do is be generous with our time. And this week we talked about our talents. That God gives us the opportunity to be generous with our talents. And we looked at the story of Moses, where Moses is talking to the burning bush, and God says, like, you're going to go to Israel, you're going to go to Egypt, and you're going to get my people out, and you're going to do all these amazing things. And Moses is like, Pharaoh won't listen to me. The people won't listen to me. And God's like, what's in your hand? And he's got a staff. He's like, throw it on the ground. Throws it on the ground, turns it to a snake. And then he's like, no, go grab it by the tail, And so he shows Moses, like, I don't, all you need in order to do the mission I have for you is what you already have. And then I'm going to use it, and I'm going to bless it, and I'm going to magnify it, and I'm going to make much of it. And God says the same thing to us individuals. When we talk about GraceHill, because Dream Big is all about GraceHill's generosity. How do we act in generosity? And when it comes to our talents, that's one of the things is so many of us minimize what talents we have, what abilities we have. And yet God goes, I have this big mission for you. You guys are going to start this church. You're going to grow this church. You're going to draw people in. You're going to connect them to Jesus. You're going to help them through huge issues in their life. You're going to be with them in blessings and in hardships and all the. And it's like, wow, but God, I don't think we're equipped to do that. I don't know. And he goes, what's in your hand? What are you good at? Now, give it to me. Mm-hmm. Give me opportunity to work in it. With that, with what you're good at, step up and use it. And I'm going to work through that and do powerful things with it, which is just such a beautiful concept, And God does it with Moses, and then God does it with us. And so, the beauty of the church is, answering that first question of what's in your hand. Because God calls us in 1 Corinthians, he tells us that we're all part of the body of Christ. That every single one of us has a unique skill set, blessing, giftedness, and every single person, when you put it all the puzzle pieces together, we make a beautiful team. And so there are people that are good at one thing that aren't good at another, and there are people that are good in upfront things, and there are people that are good at behind the scene things. And he's going to put the church together, and it's going to have the skill sets that it needs in order to succeed, because God's not going to give us a mission that we can't accomplish. You take something simple, like we had our board meeting Monday night, and our treasurer, Charlie, was there, and he was talking about the sermon, and he was like, so much of my life I thought of, because he's an actuary at Mutual of Omaha. Mm-hmm. He's like, so often in my life, my skill set, I always thought of it professionally. Like, God gave me this so that I could do this professionally. Mm-hmm. He goes, and then I didn't realize until years ago that when I took on the treasurer job, that God was actually equipping me to do this. Mm-hmm. Like, that I was well equipped and trained to be able to lead GraceHill through its biggest challenge financially ever, taking on this Dream Big campaign, mm-hmm. and then, building a building. And I mean, like, Charlie, we would walk into the meetings with the banks and stuff like that, and they were expecting a typical church treasurer, and Charlie's walking in with like 5-year projections, spreadsheets, all this kind of stuff. And they're like, oh, and it's like, yeah, we got professionals on this. Yeah. We know what we're doing. Right. Charlie's like, we need this. I don't even know the stuff he would do, but he would do all these sheets and charts. And he was like, I realized, like, God equipped me and brought me on at the right time to use my skill sets that I already had. And I was able to lead us in a direction that, we've been blessed, Well,
I suppose the question that comes to mind for me is it's entirely possible that God opened this path for Charlie, this education and this professional experience for such a time like this. Right. Maybe that was always the point. Right. And his career was, you have to have a job and you have to work and all that. Yeah. But actually, all this has led you to
the biggest thing in your life.
Yeah.
At the end of his life is my hope, would be, as he looks at his life, mm-hmm. the biggest thing he sees in his life at the end was that he led GraceHill and got GraceHill the opportunity to do something like this. Mm-hmm. That made a difference in eternity for people's lives. And his profession was a way to provide for his family and stuff, but that, like Ryan Hahn, our president, says it all the time. Like the reason he decided to come on board with starting GraceHill was he prayed about it and said, "This might be the greatest thing I do in my life."
Yeah.
And you're talking about a really successful dude that has done a bunch of incredible things, and yet he hangs his hat on GraceHill. It's like this is the most important and incredible thing that I've done.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way too. That my time in Knoxville and my time in seminary was all training me and preparing me for this. That this is what GraceHill's doing is the most important thing in my career that I'm ever going to do. Because I've said it before, I'm never planting again. Like
Never say never.
Well, GraceHill is going to plant, but I'm saying because people are like, now that you've planted one, do you want to go somewhere else and plant? And it's like, no. Like I know that this was the perfect lineup of the right people at the right time, at the right place, at the and it's just never going to be like that again. And I'm going to ride this wave as long as I can, and see where it goes. And it'll be much different starting new churches out of GraceHill than starting GraceHill from scratch, So, but yeah, and the coolest part is just like the heart and the passion. You take somebody like Akani DeLuey, who is for our trivia night, like she doesn't just make snacks. You come in and it's like like a popcorn bar with all the and she's dressed up, and you just give people these opportunities to serve, and you just watch them, like our volunteer of the month, Robin Gore, like the kids love her.
Yeah.
And she just walks in and she's like it's nothing.
Right.
Like just and I think so many times that's the hard part is we don't recognize our talents.
So
we minimize our talents, I guess.
Yeah, or we covet them.
Meaning how?
Meaning it's mine. It's my talent. It's my gift.
Right.
And I'll use it to my glory.
So the next step is how do we use those talents? That was the next question. And I think the challenge is, one, we don't ever see our talents as something to give to God. We see it as something for us. Like you said, like I'm good at this. How do I profit off this in the workforce? How do I use this in my personal life to my advantage? How do I do those things? But we never actually say like, how do I use this to bless God? Like what eternal purpose does my gift have? And we talked about some of the things like, people minimize these things like friendliness, like there are these people. Joe's my wife's dad is one of them. He could literally talk to a brick wall for 30 minutes, and like he can talk to anybody, and he does. And sometimes it's obnoxious. Like we're trying to order food or something, and he's busy, talking to the waiter about their life and where they grew up and what their favorite this and we're like, Marlon, we're trying to order food. The kids are hungry. Like he just it's a blessing that he has, that he can just talk to anybody, and people are, and I'm sure he thinks nothing of it. Like, well, anybody can talk to people. It's like, no, not everybody has that skill set. Like, not everybody has that ability to just connect with people and relate, and not everybody's friendly, and not everybody can serve. I made that joke about like there are people that 10 minutes into serving are like, nobody's thanking me. Nobody's, they're just not built to selflessly serve. All of us should, and that's a skill. I'm not saying that I condone, being selfish in your serving, but there are some people that can serve for 20 hours and they're filled up with joy, whether someone thanks them or not. And there's all kinds of working with kids, working with the tech. I mean, like I'm so thankful for the people that are in the back, working with tech. But the bigger thing is our church, in order to be the church that we're called to be, is going to take people being generous with their talents. People coming forward. And that was how we ended it. It was like, look, I don't need to come to you and beg you, hey, I see that you do this professionally. I see that you do this in your social life. Like, will you please do this for us? when we are a church that is all in and have a generous heart, we are coming forward saying, here's what I'm good at. How can you use it? Here's what I bring to the table. Tell me where to direct this so that I can make a difference in our church and in our community. And sometimes, we have people that come to us and are like, I'm good at this. And we're like, we don't actually need that right now. But here's some places in the community that could use that. And it's been so cool, like we have some people that can do, some lawyers that have come to us and like, what do you need? And we'll need a lawyer every once in a while, like with to look over some stuff. But, like one of our lawyers helped out one of the Hispanic churches in town, get, what do you call it? A 501c3 status, and stuff like that. And cause we knew, hey, we don't need something right now, but we do know someone that does need some legal help, and like there's tons of things you can do like that. You take someone like a Jason Gore, who, is a paramedic on, and led us through like CPR training, with Mike Westcott, who's a doctor, and it's like, hey, here's what I can do. Let me do it. Like I love that stuff. And our church needs to be filled with that.
Well, you said over and over and over again, we're not building a building, we're building a church. And the church is a community of people. It's made up of people. That's what the church is. And we have a lot of responsibilities and a lot of objectives and goals in God's name and to his glory. But it takes the people of the church to accomplish those. And I'm certain, I know firsthand that we've got people on the sidelines. And at different seasons of life and, it's different schedules and priorities. I totally get that. But we've got people on the sidelines who are massively talented, incredibly talented. And for whatever the reason, just they haven't been willing to step forward, whether that's consistently or at all, to use those gifts. And just to go back and reiterate, those are not their gifts; they're God's gifts. Yeah, they're owned by God. Them. Yeah, and what God does when He blesses us is there's an expectation that we use those gifts to His glory. And not everybody can be in full-time ministry. Not everybody can be in part-time ministry. I get that. Not everybody can serve on a weekly basis or even a monthly basis. But I would think that anybody who sat there Sunday morning knowing full well the weight of the talent that God's blessed them with is dormant in His church, would feel a bit convicted.
And that's the thing with the three ways that we can be generous: the time, talents, and resources or treasures. At different seasons of life, you're going to be able to step up in different ones of those. You hit a certain season, and all of a sudden you have a lot of time, and so you can be generous with your time. Sometimes you're generous with your talent, where you're like, hey, I don't have a lot of time, but if you get in a pinch and you need this, like I can do this. Just little things. We have people that are like, hey, when we get that building, you don't need a landscape team. Like, that's my jam. That's what I'm good at. We're going to have the most beautiful flowers. We're going to have the most beautiful, and they're just like, hey, as soon as you tell me, I'm ready to do that kind of stuff. We got a bunch of guys that do woodworking and are going to build stuff around the church and stuff like that. And we're not, and I said this at the beginning, if all you hear when we say generosity is you're after my money or you're after free labor or you're after, like you're just trying to take, you're wrong. We're after much more. We're after your heart. Yeah. We want you to have a heart that's generous, because that's what it takes to be the church of God. That when we look out at the world and we say, someone ought to do something about this, or look at this bad thing, or how come this is happening, and what has to happen in order to change this world is the people of God being generous with their time, their talents, and their treasures to make a difference. And God will do immensely more through it. It's not like it's up to us to fix it, but we just have to step up and go, and God's going to use it. Yeah. And he does powerful things through what we do.
Yeah, and going back to last week's message. No, he's fine. Logan?
Okay.
Yeah, he's good. In how we should use our time. Going back to last week.
Yeah.
God first.
God first.
Prioritize your life. Look at your schedule.
Yeah, and
God first.
it's not like, oh, I need to be doing 40 hours a week to God. No, that's not what I said. I'm just saying carve out the time. An hour a day. An hour a day. Like, boom. And God's not after trying to add to your schedule. If God looked at your schedule, and I said this to kick off the sermon, if God looked at your schedule, God would cut so much junk out of your schedule that you would go, oh, you're right. That's not productive. That's not helpful. That only stresses me out. That's not good for me. God would cut stuff out and he would go, now replace it with something that's going to bring abundance and joy to you.
Yeah.
And just, okay, an hour a day with God. Or serving somebody. Or, resting. Like God's after your abundance. Like take time to rest. I mean, he makes a commandment that tells you have to rest, and so, yeah, God's not trying to take anything from you. God's trying to bring abundance to your life, abundance of joy, of peace, of purpose. And especially when you talk about your talents, like that you get your identity not from what you're good at, but from God. And when you use your talents in a God-pleasing way, and I told the story about, public speaking. I've always had that gift. I've always been a great public speaker. And in school, my teachers hated it because I did not use it for good. I was the class clown and I was the, like all this. And then all of a sudden I start using my gift in a way that brings glory to God and that God then meets me in and then expands what I do. And man, I love it. It's a joy to get to see that all of a sudden I know that my identity and my purpose is not, oh, I'm a great public speaker. It's, I get to be a part of something bigger. God's actually using someone like me, this broken vessel right here. God, duct tapes me together and then says, now speak, and I get to see incredible things happen through God. And it's such a joy. And, we looked at the, it'll be the ending of the sermon is the big challenge. I took it back to Moses and talked about like eventually Moses got a little comfortable in his gift. He took that staff and he did incredible things with it. He parted the seas, he water from a rock, he made the Nile blood and all that. And then he just got a little too possessive of his gift. And he got angry at the people, and God told him to speak out. And instead, he just went up to the rock and hit it with the stick, and because he knew, like, I have this talent. This stick does this. Do it, And God's like, yeah, see, I didn't give you that to start doing it your way. And I didn't give it to you to make much of yourself and act like you were in charge, and it was your gift to do what you wanted with it. And he doesn't let Moses go to the promised land, which is just crazy. But I do think it shows the seriousness of God of like, hey, I didn't give your gift to make much of you. And I gave you your gift to do incredible things with me.
Well, and it's going back
take your music. That's a huge one.
I was thinking of, I can't remember what week it was or what message it was. But I was thinking about, when you lose something, when you have something and it's taken away, whether it's something that we take for granted, like the movement, the ability to speak or sing or hear or see, those things that we desperately want and rely on. But for me, it's like when the analogy would be this: when I am unable to exercise because like I've thrown my back out or something like that, I just wish so desperately that I could do that. And then I think back about all the days that I squandered not moving my body because I was too busy or I was too lazy or I just didn't want to do it or I didn't make it a priority. And then when I'm laid up, I'm thinking, what I wouldn't give to go for a jog or go for a run. And I really wish that I would have been doing that consistently leading up to. And I think that in some people's lives, there comes a time where they've got this, maybe it doesn't seem like a significant gift to them necessarily. That's something they can do. Okay. It's something they can do, but they just aren't using it. I think that it's possible, go ahead, that they're going to look back and go, I wish I was doing this more. But I do have a sense that if for whatever reason, somebody loses a talent, one way, shape, or form, loses a talent, they would most regret not using it to God's glory.
Oh, sure.
To advance the cause of Christ, to extend the kingdom.
And we feel so entitled to our talents. It's mine. I'm good at this. And we don't realize it's all God-given. Like, LeBron James did not make himself 6'8". God did that. Like we can get so possessive of our talents and our abilities and entitled to them. But yeah, like God gave them. And then one day they will be gone.
Yeah.
And what did you do with it? Did you do anything with it that made a significance? And I think it'd be cool to hear you talk about like singing. Like, I mean, that's a God-given, your music is a God-given talent. And I think you've wrestled at times with, I'm sure, because I know there's a lot of people that love you, and I've heard people say, like, have you ever thought about, like going on one of the shows or what, like, and I'm sure you've had to wrestle with that. Like, hey, that's, I don't want to speak for you. How do you handle all that?
Yeah, I've never really wrestled with it like on a big scale like that. Of like trying to go off and make it kind of scale.
But
never
why?
Ever. I don't know. It's just never interested me in that way. What I have wrestled with is making it much about me.
Yeah.
And that is to say, when I'm out and about and playing for different events and things like that, and you start to get a sense of people are like really digging it,
Oh yeah.
Think, oh, that's right.
When they're
that's
connecting.
me. It's me.
Yeah.
So I have wrestled with that, not nearly as much as I used to. It doesn't feel like that much to me now, but yeah, certainly. And it's nice. I appreciate that people appreciate it, and that people are encouraging. Craig is one of those people. He's been after me for years and years, actually, saying, "You need to go do this. You need to go. Come on. Like you're not doing enough with this gift. You're not doing enough with this gift." And so, like, I appreciate all that encouragement and everything, but it just never was something that I thought, well, yeah, I'm going to go. And I dare say that people who, whatever the gift is, if that's the pursuit, is like fame and fortune with that gift.
Yeah.
It never works out that way.
It never does.
Even if the fame and fortune it comes with a whole host of other things that they weren't expecting. Yeah. So, yeah, I think.
Well, what's the difference because you still do gigs and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. When you're singing on a Sunday morning at GraceHill versus when you're singing at a gig, it's the same talent being used, but I think it feels different, or the approach is different. I mean, there's got to be. There's just a difference when you use your gift towards God versus when you're just using, and there's nothing wrong with doing it recreationally, mm-hmm. And stuff like that. But I'm sure you have some type of difference between those.
Yeah, I think that the difference is the music in and of itself. Not to oversimplify it, but those songs in Sunday worship are prayers. Mostly. Mm-hmm.
You're asking something of God, yeah.
Yeah, or giving something to Him.
Right.
One of the things that whatever the song happens to be, you can secular or not, if I'm singing it, then I'm singing it as if I wrote it, as if I wrote those words, and then I'm singing them out and I'm sharing it. And so, yeah, the main difference is the types of songs, the lyrics, and that it's in worship. Like when I'm singing, I'm worshiping, I'm praising. That's the main difference to me. If I'm out and about singing for different events and, wherever, the music's different. And so it's like singing about, like lost love, or singing about, I can't even think of a theme of a song.
Mm-hmm.
Most songs are written, most secular music's about love or drugs. It seems like so. But yeah, I think it's just a completely different purpose. If I'm hired for an event, I'm hired to entertain people.
Yeah.
In worship, I'm worshiping. You know, God's the leader. He's blessed me with the leadership and the musical ability. So that's what we're going to do. We're all going to worship together. We're going to worship and give praise and honor and glory to God in this time, in this song. And that's just how it's always felt. And I even shared with you yesterday that I got distracted with something during a song this past Sunday, and so I biffed the intro, which happens from time to time. I'm sure it happens to you too when you're preaching. You're like you're on your track, and then all of a sudden you get into something distracts you, and it kind of takes you off.
But it's different for me because nobody knows what I was going to say. You have the words on the screen and people know the songs. So like if you but
sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes
but you also have 5 other people that are up there with you that recognize you just messed up and are trying to get with
I know.
Help you.
I can't imagine.
We're like, I'm by myself, like so. You mess up. It's a lot more. I'm sure embarrassing for you because I do all the time. Mm-hmm. I'll be like, I have a couple points and I'll miss one, and I'm like, all right, I got to find a way to get back to that. Like just make that point somewhere else.
Well, thankfully it was an unfamiliar song.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's being able to maintain the focus and understand the purpose of what we're doing and why we do it and to what end, I think is that's a really important piece of it for me. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunity and for this season and
there's power
for a long time.
There's power in singing and worship. I mean, I'm sure. I've seen you throughout our years together get emotional in a song before. I don't know if when you're doing a gig at a corporate event, you're up there getting misty-eyed.
No.
Doing one of your love songs.
No.
But there's a power and there's when you're connecting your gift in that way. And I think when I was a young pastor, that was a challenge for me. Because, I humbly, I knew I was a good speaker. Mm-hmm. I knew I had good delivery. And at the beginning, like when you're preaching your first sermons, like you want to nail it. You want people, because as much as people, like they want a pastor that loves them and they want a pastor that cares about them, but like kind of the measure of a pastor is how they preach, And people will forgive a lot of things. You can not be a good preacher, but if you love your people and you care for them, like they love you, But like the measure of a pastor is usually how they preach. And so like I wanted to nail it. I wanted to be, and like I remember like I would be so driven of like, I want to put this joke in there to make them laugh, and I want to put this moment to make them cry, and then I want to put, I was like putting like all this pressure, like but I was putting so much weight into it of like, hey, me. I want to feel this afterwards. I want to think this about it afterwards. Yeah. I want this, to be said about me afterwards. Yeah. And I would say in my first 2 years, really, there was a lot of arrogance that came into it. And a lot of using my gift for me. A lot of, Moses tapping the rock, of like.
But I think it's even more, maybe in this case anyway, really discovering your gift, leaning into it, and then needing a certain amount of affirmation and feedback to know that it's not just in your head that it's something that you're gifted
True.
with. Like there's a certain part of it, like, and I know that I'm sure this was, I'm certain that I felt this way, decades ago about mine, is that I needed somebody to be like, okay, yeah, that is good. Like,
Sure.
yeah, that did make, like, that was impactful.
Right.
It wasn't just entertaining. It was worshipful.
The feedback is good. I think, yeah, there was definitely, like, I think of like a John McKay, and you guys don't know him, but back in Knoxville, older gentleman was, president of our congregation. He would take me to Cracker Barrel once a week, like to just, coach or, be there for me. And like when he said that was a good one,
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
That meant something.
That
Yeah.
meant something,
Sure.
But, and I told this at staff the other day, we're teasing about standing ovations. And I said, one of the things that stopped me from caring so much about what people thought about the sermons was I would preach a sermon, and my senior pastor, and he did this with all good intention and heart, I think. He would say, I would get done with the sermon, and we were supposed to move into the next part of the service, and he would stop and be like, guys, wasn't that a great, like, can you believe he's only been out for 1 year, and what a great sermon, like, everybody clapped for him, and like everybody would like clap and stuff, and Rich is an interesting guy. I don't know if it was intentional or not, like, because maybe he saw in me that I was putting too much stock in what people thought, or maybe he was just trying to be supportive. I don't know. But it actually made me kind of get a sour taste in my mouth towards what people thought, where all of a sudden I did stop caring what they thought. And I just started focusing on, God, what do you want me to say?
Yeah.
And I think one of the big things that changed in my preaching, because I'd say the last 2 years in Knoxville, I did start to care less about what people said or thought or feedback. And it was more of like, did I honor God with what I did? Then let it be, But when I got here to Omaha, it was another pastor who I was, he's a year or two behind me, but he said, guys, I've really changed my preaching approach. He said, I used to spend 15, 20 hours a week on my sermons. He said, and I'm down to like 5 or 6. And he said, because all the time I read in the Bible, every time there was a sermon preached, you can look at Peter, you can look at Paul, you can look, whenever they did a speech, nowhere does it say that they prepared 15 hours before they got up and spoke. It always says that somehow they walked into the group, they walked into the synagogue, they walked in, and they just let the Holy Spirit do its work. And he said, and I've been allowing my sermons to be less scripted, less and directed, and I'm just making sure I understand the content, doing my study on what I'm preaching on, and then I'm being less driven towards a script and more driven towards what does the Holy Spirit want to say. And I think that was the biggest change in my sermon too. Because all of a sudden, like, if you look at my sermon, and if you listen to all 3, which you do every week, they're all different.
Yeah.
Where I am less worried about, because I think that's a big part of it, is when you script it out word for word, and you're like trying to nail every part, and my transitions are good, and here's a connection piece, and then here's an exegetical piece, and you it's hard not to say like that was a good or bad sermon based on what I contributed.
Yeah.
Versus, hey, here's my plan. I'm going to get up and I'm going to start going, but I'm fully open to whatever God wants to do. And so, like, very few times now do I walk away going, well, that was good or bad. Like, I just walk out going, that's what it was.
I did what I was called to do.
Right. Like, God's given me this ability to go and speak. And I'm going to use it, and I'm going to try my prayer if you watch while Brady is sending the kids out and stuff. Sometimes I do it during the second song, but sometimes it's while Brady's sending the kids out and starting his prayer for me, and the coming up in that time. I take a second or two to do my own prayer, and my prayer is always, God, may you increase and may I decrease, and God, may my wanting to please you.
Yeah.
And I get up and I go.
Yeah.
Like, God, I don't want this to be about me. I don't want, like, just, I'm going to go. I'm going to use me. And if I walk out of here going, man, because there are times where it's like, I missed a whole point. I missed a letter on that one sermon. I had 4
P-R-A-Y.
letters to spell out pray, and I missed the Y.
Yeah.
You know, like, and at the end of the day, it's like, I don't know why that happened, but it did, and I'm not going to go home and worry about it. And I didn't do my best job. Like, God's got this, because God does it all the time. That He speaks through my message and says things to people's hearts that I didn't even say.
Right.
So, and that's my encouragement to you guys. Like, use your gift. Use it. Watch what God does with it. And it's incredible to watch. And it makes a difference for our church and for our world. And one of the things we need to do is be generous with our gift.
Yeah, it's time to get off the sidelines and step forward and be prayerful about it. How about that? Start there. Be prayerful.
Right.
If you're unsure,
God, how can I use it?
Yeah.
What am I good at?
What are my gifts, Lord, and how can I be used? Use me, Lord.
And I think most of you, if you talk to someone who knows you well, your spouse, a friend, a family member, and you say, what do you think I'm good at? What do you think my talents are? Sometimes it is hard for us to see. But
It'd probably be hard for my spouse to say what I'd be good at.
Oh, stop.
I could be like, what am
You
I
are
not
so
good?
hard on Sarah.
What am I not
Sarah
good at?
loves your
What am I not
singing.
good at? She'd be
I
like, well,
watch
let me,
her.
she'd get out a running sheet. This is what you're not good at. What am I good at?
She has a list.
No, it's true though. Like you probably have an inclination, but go to the Lord in prayer.
Yep.
He'll reveal your gift because He's blessed you with it, and He wants you to use it to His glory. So go to the Lord in prayer, and then get out of the boat. Get out of the boat.
Use it.
Yeah. Well, onward we go. Talk about treasure. Ooh,
The next one, treasure.
let's do it.
And you know what? Like, Jesus talked about money almost, it was one of the biggest subjects He talked about. Because money, it is a huge part of our life.
Yeah.
We put so much worth in our money.
Yeah.
And I'm not, like.
And how we accumulate it,
Well,
and what we've done to earn it.
Yeah, and saving because it'll protect us if we have a whole bunch of it, and like all these things. And Jesus has something to say about it, and He has a lot to say about it, and we're just going to talk about it because God's after our generosity, and He's not after it to take from us; He's after it to bring abundance to our life. If we would just turn our hearts towards generosity.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Looking forward to it.
All right.
All right, brother. Thanks so much, and God bless.
God bless everybody.